Hi, it's Dorothy Garning with Scrapbooking Quebec, and welcome to Punched Out Thursday, a YouTube collaboration where a few crafty YouTubers share ideas every Thursday on what to do with those punches that are collecting dust in so many scrap rooms. I'll put links to the other participants in the information box below, so be sure to check them out because really they are full of amazing ideas. And in today's video, it's going to be a layout process video. So I'm going to be using a whole bunch of different punches to embellish my layout. Now here's the material I'll be using, and the paper comes from the Pink Paisley Paige Evans Horizon collection, and those thickers are from Chamel. And I also have a whole bunch of punches I've selected, and basically I have image punches, border punches, as well as some basic shapes to do some punch art later on. I trimmed and matted these photos in advance, and I also cut myself that border. That's that patchwork border you see, but the rest is up to me right now. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two borders in the shape almost of an upside down L, and I'm going to layer them up. And over the next minute or so, that's what you're going to see me do. While I'm doing this, I'm going to talk a little bit about my approach to decorating a page, to creating a page where I use punches to decorate. Basically, once I have the photos and the theme of my page, I go through my tools, my punches in this case, and I look for anything that can support my theme. Now in this case, I have photos of a day, or actually a few days, where I was taking photos walking around Reykjavik, Iceland. I was traveling, so I was looking for some travel themed punches. Now the first thing I came up with was a border punch by Creative Memories, and that's a film strip, and you'll see that later on. And when I was looking through my border maker cartridges, I also found a notebook cartridge. Actually, that's one I use very, very frequently. It goes for all themes. So I pulled those out. And then I was looking through my other punches, and I didn't really have a whole lot. I selected an arrow. I thought that would be good. I mean, these photos are kind of walking around town, and arrows indicate movement and energy, so I thought that would work. But aside from that, I didn't have much. So what I did was I pulled out some basic shapes, basically mostly different size circles as well as a heart punch, and I plan to do some punch art. I plan to make a camera, which will be easy enough, and you'll see that later on in this video. So what you saw me do a minute ago was I took that strip that I already cut and I added a few more strips, a little blue one and a little black one. And now what I'm doing is using that Creative Memories border punch to create this film strip. So I cut it along one side, and now I'm trimming the paper at 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to do the very same thing on the other side. So it's going to be a fairly thick border, a fairly wide border that I'm going to place along the top of the page. And that's going to kind of form my upside down L. Now my plan is actually to make a cluster of photos in that opening beneath that upside down L. So now I'm using another cartridge. That one's the notebook cartridge. That's probably my favorite one in that entire border making system. That can go for anything, like I said. And I cut myself a notebook border, and that measures 2 3/4 inch by 10 inches. And so now I'm just starting to layer them up. It's almost like I'm braiding these two borders together. Again, I'm just making sure I have enough room to place my photos there. And I decide to add a little purpley pink strip. That's the flip side of that patchwork paper in the middle of that film strip border at the top of the page, and that's ultimately where my title's going to be. Now those two important borders there, those two large size borders, they are going to house the journaling as well as the title. So they are going to play an important role on the page as well. It's not just going to be wasted decorative space. They do play an important role on the page as well. I'm struggling a bit with cutting that strip of paper straight, but I do succeed. And again, I continue with that braiding style. But before I adhere that to the page, I decide I want to emboss a little stitching along this notebook paper and as well along that purpley pink strip that's going to go along the top of the page. And those dies are from Stampin' Up. They're called Stitched Label Framelits dies, and I use them quite frequently. If you've seen my other videos, you must know that I absolutely love stitched dies. So I have quite a selection of them. So now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to adhere all of this to the page. So while I'm adhering this, I'm going to talk about something else, because at the beginning of this video, I did something a little bit different. Instead of putting an entire photo of the project, the finished project, which is what I usually do, I just did kind of like sneak peek photos, just so that you have to wait until the end of the video to see what I'm actually doing. I'm doing this in response to one of my viewers actually asked me if I would do that. She said she preferred it when videos were created that way. And I recently saw a poll on Facebook asking people, what do you prefer? Do you prefer seeing the project at the beginning or waiting until the end? So, and it turns out that most people appreciated it just seeing the finished project at the end of the video. I rarely ask people to comment, but in this case, I would really appreciate your opinion. Do you prefer it when I show the finished project at the beginning of the video, or do you prefer seeing it only at the end? I always like seeing your comments, obviously, but in this case, I'm actually asking you a favor. Anyway, back to my layout. What you saw me do was play around with the title there on wax paper, which is something I often do to play around with placement. And honestly, I had a few different options and they all looked good, but I decided to make it kind of large in the top right corner, honestly, to counterbalance that larger photo towards the left. And now I'm doing some punch art. So basically what I'm going to do is create a camera. So that measures 2 inches by 3 inches, that blue paper, and I clipped the corners with a corner rounder. And now what I'm going to do is just add a strip of black paper towards the middle. You're going to see what I'm doing. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this, but when I wanted to make a camera for this, which was inspired, of course, by that film strip that you see at the top of the page, I basically Googled it, and there's a million images on the internet that you can see. So this is very, very easy. All I'm doing is taking 3 different circle punches for the lens there. I'm using a silvery paper. That's also found in the title, as well as black and a bit of that blue. And then my favorite thing about this is the button that you're going to see on the left of the camera. I used a ticket punch that was in my stash, sorry about that. And what I find really cool about that is just that there's little angled corners. However, if you do not have a ticket punch, it's no big deal. A little square of paper would do. And finally, I added 2 little circles up on the top right corner of that camera for a flash. I felt it needed a little bit of purple, so I just cut out a heart, and I'm just going to stick that in the middle of the lens. And that's it. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking this arrow punch and I'm cutting out some silver, that paper isn't really silver. It's almost like a brushed silver, almost like a pewter. It was an old one from Stampin' Up. I really do like it. Anyway, I'm playing around with these arrows and I'm ultimately trying to create kind of a visual triangle around the page. I end up going with 2 of those arrows at the top of the page, and I put 1 sort of in the middle by that polka dotted house that you see. I'm fooling around with it. I can't decide, and I'm adding a bit of foam adhesive there. And honestly, I didn't want to, because my goal in 2020 is to make pages that are flatter than I did last year. I found my albums just a little bit too puffy last year, and I've been scrapbooking a long time, and to be perfectly honest, the pages that I've made that are flatter stand the test of time a lot better. Even though I love dimension on my page, this year I'm going to try to find that dimension elsewhere as opposed to adding a whole bunch of foam adhesive. Anyway, this is the end of my project. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to Scrapbooking Quebec, I'd love it if you would subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out the other crafty YouTubers who are participating in this series. Believe me, they are full of fantastic ideas, and their links are below. Happy 2020, and thank you for watching.